I'll tell you honestly, it was a lot easier to book people to talk about this a year ago than it is right now. This is an issue that corporations were very eager to come out and talk about last year. Since then, there's been a lot more pushback, and I think they're feeling the bite, whether it be from elected officials or whether it be from their customers. And I just wonder whether you think this has staying power or whether this is something that gets kind of pushed onto the back burner at this point.
At this point, I would say to corporate leaders, you don't have a choice, because I do think that the strength of American democracy is very much in peril. Last summer, there were protests in 50 states, multiracial protests after the video of the murder of George Floyd was released. The largest mass protest, civil rights protest we have seen in this country ever. And I think every decent person was so moved and repulsed by that video that they felt compelled to move. And of course, it's impossible to sustain perhaps that level of engagement and passion that people felt when they saw that video. But if you're sitting where I sit in the work that I do, you see videos every week of ongoing police violence against unarmed African Americans. If you sit where I sit, you are in litigation in multiple states challenging laws that are designed to restrict access to the polls. If you are passing laws that try to keep your fellow citizens from participating in the political process, if you're passing laws after voters stood online for 9 hours in Fulton County, Georgia last year to vote in the primary, and you now decide to pass a law that says you can't give water to people standing online to vote, that's a democracy problem. And corporations should be deeply concerned about anything that threatens the integrity of American democracy. And corporations have been, in the past. We should remember there were 400 corporations that signed on to briefs in 2015 encouraging the Supreme Court to support marriage equality. Corporations have been involved in issues of climate change and affirmative action, signing on to amicus briefs in the Supreme Court and talking about the importance of diversity in their corporations. So it's not as though corporations have not taken steps. The question is, what is the reason for the misstep now? And when we're in a situation of crisis, which I honestly believe this country is in, what is the responsibility of the corporation, which benefits from all of the resources and all of the freedoms that go along with American democracy? There have to be responsibilities that go along with that. And they're not just responsibilities to the shareholders for profits.
So what are you asking of corporate leaders right now?
Well, in 1886, the Supreme Court kind of issued in a kind of a throwaway line in an opinion called Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad that corporations were persons for purposes of the 14th Amendment. And that has actually given corporations the ability to act as citizens, to sue as they did in Citizens United and other cases, and to receive all the protections of the Constitution like a natural person would. Well, a natural person like me or like you has responsibilities to American democracy. We too are citizens. And so I think that corporations have to see their role in that way. Of course, they have a responsibility to shareholders, and that's one of their primary interests. But in moments where there are core issues that affect our democracy, corporations have to speak out. They have to make demands of their colleagues and of their clients, and they should be unafraid to do so. I think corporations need an infrastructure within the corporation that is looking at a set of social responsibility issues. It's not limited to DEI. It's not limited to diversity and inclusion. We want to see those numbers of diversity keep ticking up. That's vitally important. It's wonderful to see some of the corporations that are expanding women on their boards and as CEOs, but we actually need a commitment to American democracy and the ability and willingness to speak and not only put their money where their mouth is, but use their voice when necessary to address the crisis that we're currently in.
Some corporate leaders will say, look, I'm not capable of being able to track every state's voting laws. I don't know the ins and outs about it. They hear pushback from customers, but they also hear pushback from elected officials who say, wait a second, the laws that are being enacted in Georgia or in Texas or elsewhere are less restrictive than in states like New York or Connecticut. As a corporate leader, they probably at some point say, OK, this is a little more complicated or complex than I can really track, and it's not my primary job focus. What do you say to that?
I do get that. I really do. And it's one of the reasons why I stay engaged, because I think that it's important to have good information. But I think we all know that we are in a moment in this country where the truth itself is constantly under attack. And part of the threat to our democracy is the pretense that there is no truth. The good thing about being a lawyer and a litigator like me is that I actually get to read the statute. And the statute says the words that it says. And I actually try to be an honest broker in this space in providing information to corporate leaders about what these bills in fact do say. So I think at some point you have to decide what you believe is truth or not truth. I also think there are issues that are not particularly complicated. I would have loved to have seen every Fortune 500 company come together with an ad and a statement after January 6th.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.